I thought I had finally made it. After decades of sacrifice, I signed the papers for my dream, a $2 million villa perched on the ocean front, with nothing but the sound of waves to keep me company. I wanted silence, peace, and space to breathe. But my phone rang, and the voice on the other end shattered everything. It was my sister, Melissa. She didn't bother with a greeting. "We're on our way to you. There will be 15 of us. Prepare beds, towels, slippers. Food will be staying for 3 weeks. We'll be there in 40 minutes, so hurry up." I stared at the phone in disbelief. 15 people. 3 weeks. My sanctuary, my lifelong reward, was about to be turned into her personal resort. My heart raced, but instead of panicking, I felt a strange calm spread through me. I smiled, because I had a plan. When Melissa hung up, I stood frozen in the middle of my half-unpacked living room. The phone still pressed against my ear, even though the line had gone dead. The Pacific stretched endlessly outside my window, waves rolling in steady rhythm, but all I could hear was the echo of her command: "Prepare beds, towels, slippers, food. 15 of us, 3 weeks." My hands shook as I set the phone down on the granite counter. For years I had dreamed of this exact view. The endless horizon, the salty air rushing through wide-open windows, the faint cries of seagulls over the cliffs. I'd worked double shifts as an engineer, skipped vacations, lived frugally while others splurged, all for this moment. This house wasn't just property, it was my sanctuary, and Melissa, my own sister, had decided it was hers too. I remembered the tone in her voice. It wasn't a request, it wasn't even a suggestion, it was a demand, delivered with the certainty of someone who had gotten her way too many times before. Growing up, Melissa had always been the one who snapped her fingers, and I was the one who cleaned up the mess. When she wanted my new clothes, she borrowed them and never returned them. When she needed help with rent in her 20s, I wrote the checks, convincing myself it was just for now. And when she couldn't afford her son's tuition, I dipped into my savings again, telling myself, family comes first. But now? Now she wanted my home. The irony made me laugh, though my chest tightened. I had just moved in a week ago. Cardboard boxes still cluttered the hallway, art pieces leaned against the wall waiting to be hung. My bed frame hadn't even been assembled yet. I was still sleeping on a mattress on the floor. And Melissa thought she and her friends, 15 strangers to me, could just waltz in and set up camp for 3 weeks? I closed my eyes, remembering her exact words. "We'll be there in 40 minutes, so hurry up." Not a question? Not a courtesy? Just an order. She didn't even pause to ask if I was available, if I was comfortable, if I was willing. She assumed that, because I had more than she did, I owed her everything. And maybe in the past, I would have caved. Maybe the old me, the one who hated confrontation, the one who believed keeping peace was more important than speaking truth, would have scrambled to make beds, to stock the fridge, to make Melissa happy. But as I stood in that villa, my villa, with the ocean air cooling my flushed skin, something shifted. I wasn't the same Rebecca she'd bossed around as a teenager. I wasn't the same woman who had quietly covered her debts or smiled through her insults at family dinners. No. This was my line in the sand. My eyes landed on a crystal wine glass I had unpacked earlier. The sunlight struck it, scattering tiny rainbows across the marble countertop. Fragile, beautiful, but resilient if held the right way. I picked it up and whispered to myself, this time, things will be different. Because Melissa thought she could barge into my villa. She thought she could take over my life the way she always had. But she had no idea what I had planned for her. The sound of the ocean faded as my mind pulled me backward, into years I had tried to bury. Melissa had always been the kind of person who took without asking, and if you dared to say no, she'd make you feel guilty until you gave in anyway. I remembered the first time she called me for help. I was 23, fresh out of college, barely making ends meet with my entry-level job. She wanted money for rent. "Just a couple $100, Becky," she'd pleaded, using that sugary voice that made her sound almost innocent. "I'll pay you back the moment I get my next paycheck." I gave it to her, of course. She never repaid me. Years rolled on, and the numbers grew larger. When her credit cards maxed out, she called me. When her car broke down, she called me. When her son needed new clothes, she called me. And every time, the story was the same: she was desperate, she promised repayment, and she always failed to deliver. The biggest blow came when her daughter went off to college. I had been saving for my dream home, watching every dollar like a hawk. Melissa, on the other hand, had spent lavishly designer handbags, spa weekends, vacations with friends. Then suddenly, when tuition was due, she turned to me. "Becky, you've always been the responsible one. You have money. Can't you help just this once? Just this once." How many times had I heard those words? Too many. But I paid. I paid because I didn't want my niece to suffer for her mother's recklessness. And then there was the wedding. Melissa wanted the grandest event possible: flowers flown in, a ballroom dripping in gold and crystal, a gown that cost more than my car. Of course she didn't have the money for it. "Please, Becky," she whispered to me over coffee one afternoon, her hands clutching mine dramatically. "You're the only one I can count on. This day means everything to me." I signed the check. I told myself it was love, that family was worth the sacrifice. But deep down, a voice inside me whispered the truth. Melissa didn't value me. She valued what I could give her. Now, standing in my villa, I could see the pattern clearly. It wasn't love. It wasn't sisterhood. It was entitlement, decades of it, layered like bricks on my shoulders. Melissa had always assumed I'd be there to catch her when she fell, and I had. But now she wanted to turn my lifelong dream into her playground. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. This villa was supposed to be my fresh start, a reward for every sleepless night, every overtime hour, every holiday I'd spent at the office instead of at home. Yet, in Melissa's mind, my sacrifices meant nothing more than free vacations for her and her freeloading entourage. I walked to the mantelpiece, where I had placed a single framed photograph, our parents, long gone, smiling on the porch of our childhood home. My chest ached. They had raised us with the same lessons: work hard, be kind, respect what belongs to others. Somehow, Melissa had chosen to forget all of that. I touched the frame and whispered, "You'd be ashamed of her if you knew. And maybe, just maybe, you'd be proud of me for what I was about to do." Because this time, Melissa wasn't going to get what she wanted. 40 minutes felt like 4 seconds. I hadn't even finished unpacking the box of dishes in my kitchen when the rumble of engines echoed up the coastal road. I stepped to the window, and my stomach dropped. 5 cars. A convoy. Melissa's black SUV at the front like a general leading her troops, followed by sedans stuffed with people, a pickup truck piled high with coolers and beach chairs. Dust rose from the driveway as they pulled in, tires crunching over the stones like an army advancing into conquered territory. I tightened my grip on the counter, the cool granite grounding me. My villa, the home I had saved for, dreamed of, cried over, was about to be stormed. Car doors slammed in rapid succession. Laughter erupted. Children shrieked. Someone yelled, "Wow, this place is insane." And then I saw her, Melissa, emerging from the SUV with oversized sunglasses, her hair whipping in the breeze like she was about to film a commercial. "Becky," she called, spreading her arms wide as though this were some joyful reunion. "Look at this paradise. You lucky, lucky girl." I didn't move. My front door stood between us, solid oak with frosted glass panels. I thought for a fleeting second about leaving it locked, pretending not to be home. But the pounding on the door came before I could even decide. "Come on, sis. Open up. We drove 4 hours to get here." I opened the door an inch, just enough to meet her smug smile. "Melissa, I told you. I'm not ready for guests." She didn't even hesitate. She shoved the door wider and brushed past me into the foyer, her perfume filling the air. Behind her, a flood of bodies poured in, faces I didn't recognize, dragging suitcases, lugging boxes of snacks and beer, shouting to one another like this was some frat house weekend. "Check out that pool!" someone shouted from the hallway. "This kitchen is massive," another voice echoed. A young woman I'd never met slipped off her sandals and padded across my imported marble, leaving damp footprints from the beach. "Stop," I said, my voice trembling more with fury than fear. "You can't just walk in like this." But they didn't even hear me, or worse, they didn't care. Melissa twirled in the center of the foyer, spreading her arms wide. Isn't this perfect, everyone? Just like I told you, my sister always knew how to live large. My sister. She said it like a title that granted her automatic ownership, like being related to me was a lifetime pass to every dream I had ever worked for. I followed her gaze as she pointed toward the staircase. The master bedroom's upstairs, right? I'll take that one. It has the best view. My heart lurched. No, I said sharply, stepping into her path. That's my private space. Her sunglasses slid down her nose, revealing the icy glint in her eyes. Becky, don't be selfish. We're family. And besides, you've got plenty of space. Behind her, more voices cheered, dragging their belongings deeper into my home, rearranging my furniture like they owned the place. A man popped open a cooler, the crack of a beer can filling my pristine living room. In less than 10 minutes, my villa, the sanctuary I had dreamed of, was no longer mine. It was theirs. And Melissa, my sister, stood at the center of it all, smiling as if she had won. I stood frozen at the base of the staircase, watching Melissa march upward like a queen ascending her throne. Her heels clicked against the polished wood, echoing through the villa like a countdown to war. Melissa, I snapped, following her. That room is off limits. It's mine. She tossed her head back, her laugh sharp and dismissive. Oh, Becky, don't be ridiculous. It's just a room. And everyone knows the host gives up the best space for her guests. Guests? I hissed. You're not guests. You invited yourself and 15 people I've never even met. She didn't answer. Instead, she threw the double doors of my master bedroom open wide. Sunlight poured in, illuminating the balcony overlooking the Pacific. My sanctuary. My dream. She stepped inside, as though it had always belonged to her. 2 women I didn't recognize followed, dragging rolling suitcases across the hardwood. This is perfect for us, one squealed. The light in here will be amazing for selfies. No, I said, my voice trembling as I blocked the doorway. Nobody sleeps in here. This is my private space. Melissa turned slowly, pulling off her sunglasses. Her eyes were cold, calculating. Becky, stop being dramatic. You have 4 other bedrooms. This one suits me best. Besides, she glanced toward the balcony. I'll need the view for my morning yoga videos. My followers will love it. The casual entitlement in her tone made my stomach twist. I stepped forward, planting myself between her and the balcony. Get out. Her friends exchanged amused looks, as if this was some sort of performance. Melissa smirked. Really, Becky? After everything I've done for you? That line almost made me laugh. Everything she'd done for me? For years, I had been the one bailing her out, saving her from eviction, covering her mistakes. But in Melissa's warped version of reality, I was the selfish one. You don't get it, I said, my voice rising. This house isn't a vacation rental. It's not a free resort. It's mine. I bought it. I earned it. And you don't get to take it over. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the sound of waves outside. Then Melissa's smirk hardened. She stepped closer, invading my space, her perfume sharp in my nose. You think this place makes you better than me? She sneered. You think money changes who's in charge here? I'm your sister, Becky. Family always comes first. Not like this. I shot back, my hands shaking but my voice steady. Not by force. Her eyes narrowed, and in that instant I saw the truth. She had never come here for a visit. She had come to claim what wasn't hers, the way she always had. Only now, the stakes were higher. Behind me, her friends had already flung open my closet doors, fingering my clothes, making comments about borrowing dresses. My blood boiled. Out, I shouted, louder than I'd ever spoken to Melissa in my life. All of you, out. Melissa froze, stunned by the force of my voice. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. But just as quickly, she masked it with a cold smile. You're making a big mistake, sis, she said softly. One you'll regret. And with that, she tossed her suitcase onto my bed, the final insult. For a moment, I just stared at the suitcase sprawled across my bedspread, its metal zipper glinting in the sunday. Something inside me cracked. Years of biting my tongue, of giving in for the sake of family harmony, of letting Melissa trample over every boundary I had ever set, all of it boiled up at once. Take it off my bed. My voice came out low, dangerous, trembling with fury. Melissa blinked, taken aback by my tone. Then her lips curled into a smirk. Oh, Becky, relax. You've got to learn to share. Family helps family, remember? Isn't that what Mom always said? Her words stabbed like knives. She knew exactly which strings to pull, always dragging our parents' memory into her manipulations. I said no. That single word rang through the room like a gunshot. The chatter behind us died down. For the first time, her friends stopped rummaging and looked at me as though realizing this wasn't a joke. Melissa tilted her head, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Don't be selfish. Everyone here agrees, right? A chorus followed voices I didn't even recognize. She's got plenty of space. Why make such a fuss over one room? Come on, Becky. Don't ruin the vibe. One of the men cracked open a beer right there in my bedroom, foam spilling onto my hardwood floor. He raised the can toward Melissa. To family? My jaw tightened so hard I thought my teeth might break. Family doesn't invade, I snapped, turning on them. Family doesn't demand, and family sure as hell doesn't treat someone's home like a hotel. Melissa's smirk faltered. You're being dramatic, she muttered, her confidence wavering for a split second. But then she stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. What are you going to do, Becky? Throw us all out? You don't have the guts. Her words were gasoline on a fire I'd been holding back for years. I felt my hands tremble, not from fear, but from the rage of decades finally finding its voice. Yes, I said, louder this time, so the whole room heard. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Gasps rippled through the group. Melissa's eyes widened, then narrowed. You wouldn't dare. I took a step forward, squaring my shoulders, my pulse pounding in my ears. Watch me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking back. I wasn't the quiet younger sister cleaning up the mess. I was the homeowner, the woman who had built a life through sweat and sacrifice, and this was my line in the sand. Melissa scoffed, but there was a flicker of unease in her expression. You'll regret this, sis. Everyone will see what kind of person you really are. Good, I shot back, because I'm done letting you define me. This house is mine, and you're not welcome here. End quote. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the muffled crash of waves outside. For once, Melissa had no snappy comeback, and for once I didn't back down. The room felt like it was closing in on me. 15 people in my house, voices rising, laughter echoing in my sanctuary as if I were invisible. My pulse thudded in my ears. I had tried reason. I had tried standing firm. But Melissa wasn't listening, she never had. I took a slow breath, forcing my shaking hands to stay steady. Then I turned and walked out of the master bedroom. Behind me, I heard scoffs, mocking laughter, Melissa's voice dripping with disdain. She's bluffing. She won't do anything. But she was wrong. I strode down the hall into my study and shut the heavy oak door with a sharp click. The lock turned under my fingers, and for the first time since they arrived, I felt the faintest sense of control. I leaned against the desk, breathing hard, staring at the phone in my hand. My thumb hovered over the screen. Could I really do this? Call the police on my own sister? On people who were technically family? A crash from the living room made my decision for me. The sound of glass shattering, followed by laughter, rolled through the house. My sanctuary was under siege. I dialed. 911. What's your emergency? My voice trembled, but it carried a strength I hadn't heard in myself before. There are people in my home who refuse to leave. About 15 of them. They forced their way in. I need help. The operator's tone was calm, professional. Ma'am, are you in immediate physical danger? Not yet, I whispered, glancing at the door as shadows passed under the crack. But they won't leave. I told them multiple times. They're ignoring me. Can you confirm this is your residence? Yes, I said firmly. I purchased the property last month. I have the deed here. My name is Rebecca Collins. Officers are being dispatched to your location. Stay in a secure room until they arrive. Estimated arrival time is 15 minutes. 15 minutes. I could survive that. A loud knock rattled the study door. Becky! Melissa's voice sang out, falsely cheerful. Come on, don't be like this. We're family. Let's talk like adults. Another voice, male and mocking, chimed in. She's calling the cops, isn't she? Total drama queen. My stomach twisted, but I stayed silent. Then Melissa's tone shifted, sharp as broken glass. If you do this, Becky, you'll regret it. You'll lose me. You'll lose all of us. And you'll be alone in this big empty house. Her words pressed on old wounds, the fear of loneliness that had haunted me for years. But instead of breaking me, they hardened me. I looked at the framed photo on my desk, our parents smiling, a reminder of values Melissa had long abandoned. I gripped the phone tighter and whispered to myself, better alone than exploited. Outside the door, the voices grew frantic. They knew the police were coming. I could hear Melissa hissing to her friends, panic slipping into her tone. Don't worry, she won't go through with it. She never does. But this time, she was wrong. The minutes dragged like hours. My eyes flicked constantly to the clock on my desk, each second stretching longer than the last. Outside my study door, the whispers had turned into arguments. Some of Melissa's friends wanted to leave. Others insisted on waiting me out. Melissa's voice, sharp and domineering, cut through them all. She won't do it. She's just being dramatic. Give her a few minutes. She'll open the door and apologize. Then, finally, the sound I'd been waiting for. Sirens. Faint at first, then louder, cutting through the ocean breeze like a blade. My heart leapt into my throat. Relief surged through me, tempered with a flicker of dread because I knew the confrontation wasn't over. Heavy pounding shook the front door. This time, it wasn't Melissa or her entourage. This knock carried authority. Police! Open up! The house erupted into chaos. Footsteps scrambled across my marble floors, voices overlapping in panic. I unlocked my study door and stepped into the hallway, my phone still clutched in my hand like a lifeline. Melissa was at the foyer, plastering on her sweetest smile as she pulled the door open. Officers, thank goodness you're here, she cooed, her tone dripping with false innocence. My sister's having a bit of an episode. We were just trying to spend some time together, and she… Ma'am. The officer's voice cut her off, firm and unimpressed. Two of them stepped inside, a tall man with graying temples and a younger woman with sharp, watchful eyes. Are you the homeowner who made the call? I stepped forward, my knees trembling but my voice steady. Yes, Rebecca Collins. This is my property. They entered without permission and refused to leave when I asked. The older officer nodded. Do you have proof of ownership? I opened the folder I'd prepared and handed over the deed. My fingers no longer shook. They felt steady for the first time all day. Melissa laughed lightly, trying to wave it off. This is a family matter, officers. She's just overreacting. We drove hours to get here, and she invited us. I never invited you, I snapped, my voice ringing louder than I expected. You demanded. You barged in. You've destroyed my home. The younger officer scanned the room. Her eyes lingered on the half-empty beer cans, the piles of luggage, the muddy footprints streaking across my pristine floor. Her jaw tightened. Sir, the older officer said to me, do you want these individuals removed from your property? Yes, I said clearly, my voice unwavering. Every single one of them. Gasps rippled through the group. Melissa's smile faltered. Becky, don't do this, she hissed. Think about what you're saying. We're family. Family doesn't force their way into someone's home, I said coldly. The officer turned back to Melissa and her crowd. You have 15 minutes to gather your belongings and vacate. If you're still here after that, you'll be arrested for trespassing. The room exploded with protests. Some of Melissa's friends cursed under their breath as they started stuffing clothes back into suitcases. Others shot me dirty looks as though I were the villain. Melissa herself stood frozen, her fists clenched, her face a mask of fury barely concealed beneath a trembling smile. You'll regret this, she whispered, leaning close as she dragged her suitcase toward the door. You think you've won, but this isn't over. I didn't flinch. For the first time in years, I felt taller than her, stronger, untouchable. As the last of them shuffled out under the officer's watchful eyes, Silence began to creep back into my villa. My villa. And for the first time since that phone call, I allowed myself to breathe. When the door finally closed behind them, the silence was deafening. No more laughter bouncing off the walls. No more clinking beer cans or careless footsteps smearing dirt across my floors. Just the steady rhythm of waves outside and the faint hum of the air conditioner. I leaned against the foyer wall, exhaling so deeply it felt like the first real breath I'd taken all day. My hands were still trembling, not from fear this time, but from release. The police had done their job. Melissa and her entourage were gone. I walked through the villa slowly, almost like an investigator surveying a crime scene. Beer bottles on the counter, towels abandoned on the floor, fingerprints smudging the glass doors to the balcony. In my bedroom, my bedspread was wrinkled from the suitcase Melissa had so boldly thrown there. A pair of shoes I didn't recognize sat carelessly by the window. I picked them up and tossed them outside. As I straightened the blankets on my bed, I caught sight of the ocean through the balcony doors. The sun was dipping lower, painting the water in shades of orange and pink. For a moment, I just stood there, my chest rising and falling, with something between exhaustion and relief. They were gone. Melissa's voice still echoed in my head, though. "You'll regret this. You'll lose us. You'll be alone in this big empty house." The words twisted in my chest, pressing on old wounds. But then another thought followed, clear and steady. I'd rather be alone than used. I poured myself a glass of wine and carried it to the balcony. The salty breeze brushed my skin, cool and soothing. I sank into a chair, finally letting the weight slip from my shoulders. For years, I had been the sister who said yes, the one who sacrificed, the one who swallowed anger for the sake of peace. Today, for the first time, I had said no, and I hadn't crumbled. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. Dozens of missed calls and texts from Melissa lit up the screen. I didn't bother opening them. Instead, I turned the phone over, face down. Tonight wasn't about her. Tonight was about me. I raised my glass toward the ocean, the horizon glowing gold as if the universe itself was toasting with me. To peace, I thought. To freedom. To finally drawing the line. Melissa would rage. She would twist the story, call me selfish, maybe even try to turn the rest of the family against me. I knew that. But I also knew something else. I had proof, I had the law on my side, and most importantly, I had finally reclaimed my voice. This villa wasn't just a house, it was a symbol. A reminder that I had earned my place, my peace, my boundaries. And no one, sister or not, was ever going to take that away from me again. As the last rays of sun slipped beneath the horizon, I felt something I hadn't in years. Hope.